Alright, I know I'm a little late on covering this, but we are about to get the craziest rerun banners yet for Honkai Star Rail. So, about a week ago in the 2.5 livestream, they told us that we are going to be getting a new format for rerun banners. It's only going to have this new format in the first half of 2.5. We'll see if they have it in both sides of the versions as we get more characters, but this new format is going to have 3 rerun characters running at the same time, and you can pick which one you're going to be pulling for. And it also does share the same pity as the original, limited character banner as well, so it's not like you have to swap through pity, which is very nice, so you do retain your pity that you've had before. And the first 3 characters on this banner are going to be Robin, Kafka, and Black Swan, who are all very strong characters and are very good. So today I'm going to give my thoughts and analysis on these characters to see whether or not you should be pulling for them or you should be skipping for something else. And I really think too that these banners are kind of leading us into the structure for Honkai Star Rail, where focusing on archetypes like dot or follow-up is going to be the way to go to really have your account progress really nicely and be able to get through a lot of the endgame content. So without further ado here, let's start out with Robin. And I'm just gonna flat out say it, I think Robin is the best character of the 3 to pull for based off of her value. She's an amazing harmony support, and her best teams are going to be follow-up teams. And with Feixiao just coming out at the same time of this banner as well, it would be being a very strong follow-up character, plus the amount of follow-up characters we have already, Robin is already going to be amazing for a lot of players. To sum it up, she mainly offers a ton of team-wide buffs, such as a damage buff through her skill, a massive team-wide attack buff through her ultimate, and then she also gives crit damage not just to the team in general, but she also gives an additional amount for follow-up attacks, which is going to be very good if you're running her alongside any follow-up character like Feixiao, Topaz, Ratio, even like Himiko and Herda for pure fiction. And not only that, she also does have a 100% action advance for all allies, so you are going to be able to get more attacks in, and for the follow-up teams it's going to be even more chances for follow-up attacks as well. Plus also, every attack that your team does will give Robin more energy to get her ultimate, so you're going to have as much uptime as possible by using her with follow-up characters and just characters that attack a lot in general. So she'll even work good with someone like Gallagher, who can attack multiple times in quick succession. He also is pretty cheap to build. In terms of the stats you need for relics, you really just need a ton of attack on her and then just a little bit of speed, because she does have a trace that will advance her action forward by 25% so at the start of battle. So because of that, you really just need to stack as much attack as possible, give her an energy regen rope so you can get her energy up, because her ultimate is the big part of her gameplay. And now some of you might be asking, oh, Robin sounds really good, but I don't really use follow-up characters like that, because that was also my situation back when Robin first came out. But even without, using follow-up characters, I do think Robin can still be very solid. You are going to run into situations where you don't have the ultimate up as much, so you might want to run a light cone that has energy regen on it, like if you have Bronnia's signature, that I believe that does give some energy regen on it, to give you some extra energy and try help the uptime a bit more. But from what I've used in in-game content, I do think that Robin is the closest thing to someone who wants a Ruan Mei on both sides of MOC or Pure Fiction or Apocalyptic Shadow. Robin is the closest thing to Ruan Mei. I still think Ruan Mei is better overall on a universal standpoint, but if you're running follow-up attacks or you're running characters that can attack multiple times in quick succession, Robin is going to be the best value character for you. And considering now that we're getting Feixiao, and if you're going to be pulling for Feixiao and you don't have Robin, I think Robin might end up just being a must-pull for you as well, if you have the Jades, of course. But if you don't, I think Robin might even be a better pickup in general, considering how many follow-up attack characters we have in the game right now. So now let's move on to Kafka. And for Kafka and Black Swan, we are going to talk about the same archetype here, because they both are dot characters. Now for Kafka, she is pretty much the core of the dot playstyle, And I think that if you really want to make Dot work for your account, Kafka is a must-have. Because not only does she inflict shock through the use of her ultimate, her talent's follow-up attack, and her technique, but her skill is able to re-trigger any Dot effect with a pretty big fraction of the damage that it would have originally done. So if you use your team to put on Kafka's shock, and then you have another character's wind shear, for example, or maybe you have Jiao Cho and you have burned as well, Kafka can trigger the 75% of the damage of those just from using her skill, and it doesn't decrease the turn counter of the dots being on the enemy. So you're gonna have those do even more damage, because the one thing with Dot is without Kafka is that you have very limited times when those big amounts of damage come up. But with Kafka, you're going to be able to trigger that way more often, which is really good. And she also does have a trace, which allows her ultimate to also re-trigger Dot damage, so that's even more times you're going to be able to get that huge burst of damage that Dot is really known for. And I do also think that for building her, similarly to Robin, I do think that she is relatively cheap to build, because you really just need attack and speed and a very small amount of effect hit rate, because she does have a pretty high base chance on her dots, so you don't need to build a ton of effect hit rate like you need to for other Dot characters. And when it comes to other teams for Kafka, I do think that while she is going to be like the core of the Dot team, she can also work on an Acheron team, and I've seen people take advantage of like the follow-up attack on her as well in other comps, but I don't think that's nearly as effective as other options. But I will say, when it comes to the Acheron team, if you're looking for applying as many debuffs as possible, I do think that while Kafka is going to be really good, I think other characters are going to be able to perform better on that comp. Characters like Pela and Silverwolf, who can do a ton of debuffs. Jiao Cho is going to perform very well with Acheron. So you do have options with for Acheron teams. So if you're pulling Kafka just for an Acheron team, I'm not really too sure if that's the best option based on what's available here. But I do think that if you're looking to run a Dot team and you don't have Kafka, she is a must pull. Your Dot team is going to get significantly better by having a Kafka there, and of course having her built up well. So yeah, that's what I have for Kafka. So now let's move on to Black Swan. Now, I think in terms of her damage output, like specifically for her own Arcana Dot damage, she is I believe she's the strongest Dot character in the game, just based off of her numbers alone, not including other allies along with that. And her Dot is very unique, because rather than it being the typical wind shear, she does have the Arcana Dot, which can stack up to 50 times, and as you get more stacks, you get more damage on it. But the stacks do reset upon the enemy's turn, so you get reset back to 1 stack. And you can apply Arcana through a few different ways in her kit. You have the basic attack, which can apply it. You have a skill, which also does apply defensive shred. Her talent can also apply it, and also through her technique. And there also are extra buffs that you get through Arcana based on the amount of stacks that are on the enemy. At 3 stacks, the Arcana turns from a single target attack to a blast attack. And then at 7 stacks of Arcana, it allows you to ignore a percentage of the enemy's defense. So you're going to be doing even more damage with that, plus also just the base damage multiplier increase per stack of Arcana that you have. Then you also do have her ultimate, which is not only going to allow you to retain your amount of Arcana stacks on the enemy for an extra turn. So once they get hit with it, if the ultimate is active, they won't reset back to 1. But also, you also inflict the enemy with a vulnerability debuff that will take effect specifically on their turn, which is a specific buff for Dot to do even more damage. So pairing that with a strong Dot team, and especially like a Kafka if you already have her, Black Swan is going to be very strong. And I think that for a Dot team, and since I've been using Dot ever since Kafka came out, I do think that Black Swan is the best Dot DPS right now. And because of that, if you're going to run a Dot team, she's pretty much going to be the best option most of the time. Now, obviously, if you're fighting something that isn't win weak, then you might switch to someone with burn, or maybe you yeah, maybe depending on what fight you have, you might swap around certain characters on the team. But I think in pretty much every situation that I've run Dot in, regardless of if they're not weak to win, but as long as they're weak to one of the elements on the team, I have been able to get by with Black Swan and do a ton of damage, for sure. And similarly to Kafka, Black Swan doesn't only work on Dot teams, but she also will work very well with Acheron. But same thing as I said before, there already are other options for Acheron, because the main thing with Acheron teams is that you want to get those debuffs. And you can get those debuffs with Pela, who's a 4-star character. Silverwolf can also do it. And then also for Dot teams, you can run Zhao Cho for burn and his support, and then you can run Sampo as a Dot character, which Sampo also does work well with Black Swan as well. So I think overall, if you already have Kafka and or Acheron, I think Black Swan is a really good character to pull for, but I wouldn't call her a must pull like I would, not even near the level of the other two for Kafka and Robin, because you can get by without Black Swan. Because yeah, if there's alternatives, I feel like for both her comps, that sure they're gonna do less damage overall, or they may not be as good as her in certain areas, because they're still able to clear through any game. Like people have cleared any game with Sampo still, and especially with that for Dot teams, you're really just trying to buff up dots so you can use Kafka, and then for Acheron teams, you just need to get the debuffs because Acheron is the star of those teams. You really just need to remember that you don't need to get Black Swan, I think. Now, if you love her and you want to pull her, great, because she's going to do really good, but she is absolutely not a must pull, and I think it's fine to skip her if you're not, for one, if you're not trying to build those archetypes, I don't think you really get Black Swan, but if you are and you have other characters that can perform well and are performing well, you don't really need to get Black Swan. So, overall, for this banner, I think for free-to-play players, and especially for free-to-play players that don't have multiple of these characters, it's definitely a rough, patch, because not only do we have these 3 reruns plus Feixiao that can have this patch, we have a Topaz rerun, which is absolutely crazy, especially for people who want follow-up, like myself. So we're gonna have to see how things go for that, but let me know in the comments down below who you are going to be pulling for, or are you gonna somehow be skipping, because I'm thankful to have all 3 of these characters already, so I don't have to worry about pulling for the rerun. I can just focus on Feixiao, and then as long as those pulls go well enough, I can see if I can save it for Topaz. But that is going to be it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed and want to see more content from me, definitely be sure to hit that subscribe button. And with that, I will see you all next time.